I was a qualified financial advisor in my 20s. I knew everything there was to know about money, credit scores, lending, investments, tax planning. I'd qualified in all of it. And I was living in £30,000 worth of recurring debts. Balance transferring credit cards, robbing Peter to pay Paul, living in the last pound of my overdraft, all the things. Knowing exactly what I should be doing with money and not doing any of it. The shame, as you can imagine, was unbearable. How could I sit across from clients telling them how to manage their money and invest when I couldn't manage my own? And that's when I realized something that changed everything. The problem wasn't my financial knowledge. The problem was that nobody had ever helped or spoken to me about my relationship with money. Nobody had helped me understand what I was doing and why I was doing it. And this is video or podcast number 2, depending on which platform you're listening on today, in my financial coach series. If you haven't watched video 1 yet, I'll link that in the show notes and at the end of this video. But today I wanted to talk about why financial coaching matters, why it matters now more than ever before, and whether this work is something that you're being called to do. Now, in the last episode or video, we looked at why clients self-sabotage with money. We explored the patterns, some of the beliefs that might drive their financial behaviors that are sitting beneath the surface. And today, I want to go a little bit deeper. I want to share with you why this work is so desperately needed in the world right now, how it fits with what you might already be doing, whether that's coaching, a therapist, or a financial professional, and how adding financial coaching could transform not just your clients' lives, but your own sense of purpose in your work too. So by the end of this video, you'll know whether financial coaching is something that you want to explore further. And I'm going to show you a real coaching session so that you can see exactly what this work looks like in practice. Now, we live in a world right now that has more access to financial information than ever before. YouTube videos on budgeting, apps that track every penny of your spending, podcasts about investing, courses on money management, and yet people are still struggling. They're still stuck. They're still finding themselves in the same patterns with money that their parents made or their grandparents made before them. Why? Because so much financial education addresses knowledge gaps, but money issues aren't just knowledge problems. Behind every single financial decision is a need to feel something, to feel secure, to feel valued, to feel enough. And until we actually explore those deeper needs, all the spreadsheets and the apps in the world won't create change, or certainly not lasting change. And why this matters so much than ever before is because we're living through one of the biggest identity shifts in human history around money. AI is changing how we work, how we earn, what skills are going to be valuable. This is certainly a conversation that I have with my children on a regular basis because the school educational system is still gearing them up towards professions that actually may no longer even exist, or certainly AI will be taking a large proportion of that skill set in that profession. Not all professions, but some of them. I'll pop a link into the show notes as well to my AI series, which you might want to geek out on if you're interested in this subject. But there are certainly new ways of making money that are emerging that our parents would never had imagined. And in the middle of all of this change, people are being forced to ask questions that they've never had to ask before. Who am I if my job changes? What's my value if an AI machine can do what I do? And how do I feel secure when everything is feeling uncertain? And these aren't financial planning questions. They're identity questions, and they require a different kind of support. We've also seen a huge shift in mental health awareness. Thank God. People are finally talking openly about anxiety, depression, trauma. Therapy is no longer a taboo subject. But what I've really noticed is that money is still the last taboo. People will talk about their relationships, their hormones, their childhood, their fears, but ask them about their debt, their spending habits, their shame around money, silence. And yet money stress is consistently ranked as the number one source of anxiety. It affects our sleep, our relationships, our physical well-being, and our self-worth. And so we need people who can hold space for these conversations. People who understand that when someone says, I'm bad with money, what they're really saying is, I feel like I'm not enough. Now, in my book, It's Not About the Money, I write about something that took me many, many years to get my head around. That we make debt our identity. I have debt, therefore I am bad. And we start to confuse having done something with being something. I'll just give you a quick example of this. When my husband and I, back in, goodness, this must have been like early 2000s, we bought a property. We were both mortgage advisors at the time. We bought a house. 7 years later, we sold that property for pretty much the same as what we bought it for. We'd moved to Jersey during that time and we'd moved back to the UK. And I remember vividly a conversation I had with my husband where he said, I make bad financial decisions. I'm never doing that again. And the decision that he made was something that he couldn't have foreseen. Even as a mortgage advisor, neither of us knew that the markets were going to completely crash globally, right? Even in the investment markets, we didn't know that some of the investment strategies that world leading class investment managers had been following for years would no longer work because everything became correlated, everything plummeted together, including the property market. But my husband took that experience and made it about himself. I make bad decisions. I don't make good decisions around property purchases. And it's gone on to affect his confidence in making financial decisions, especially when it comes to property. And this is the core of why financial coaching is so incredibly powerful, because money is never just about numbers. Money is wrapped up in our deepest beliefs about ourselves. Do I deserve to earn more? Am I allowed to have more than my parents? Is it safe for me to be financially independent? Am I worthy of wealth? And the meaning we give to money has power over the worth or unworthiness that we create for ourselves. So if the meaning we give to money is linked to how we feel about our deservedness, then the amount that we receive or we give will always be limited by our sense of self. This is why someone can earn more money and immediately find ways to lose it. Why someone can pay off debt and run it back up again. Why someone can have plenty and still feel terrified of running out. If you're a financial professional, you'll know this more than anybody else. The external situation changes, but the internal belief stays the same. And all our own work is around this concept of money. We have work to do ourselves with money, including me, including you. I was the qualified financial advisor living in £30,000 worth of debt. The shame I carried was immense. I thought that I should have my money perfectly sorted before I could even help anybody else. But I now know why this worked. And in fact, doing your own money work is what makes you a better person to work with money, not having it all figured out, but being in that process and being honest about your own patterns, understanding from the inside what it feels like to know what to do and not be able to actually do it. It puts you in a really remarkable empathic position. So I'm curious, having listened to this, what's your relationship with money like right now? If you're listening to this on YouTube, feel free to drop me a comment in the notes below. I read every single one and will take some time to reply. If you're listening to this on the podcast, send me a message on Instagram, Catherine Morgan Money. I'd love to know where you're at. Is it feeling complicated, messy? Are you feeling like you're in that growth stage, or you're still healing your relationship with money? How are you currently feeling? And if you're already working with people as a health coach, a business coach, a therapist, a mentor, I want you to think about this. How often does money come up in your sessions? The health coach whose client can't afford the supplements, the business coach whose client won't raise their prices, the therapist whose client's anxiety is rooted in financial shame. Money is woven into everything, and yet most practitioners feel unequipped to go there. They might sense that money is part of the issue, but they don't have the tools or the confidence to explore it. And so adding financial coaching to your existing practice is about having the skills to hold the space when money comes up, to recognize the patterns, to ask the right questions, and help your clients to integrate their relationship with money into the work that you're already doing. And if you're already in the financial world, a financial advisor, an accountant, a mortgage advisor, you know better than anyone that the technical and the practical advice only goes so far. You can give someone the perfect financial plan, you can show them exactly what to do, and then 6 months later, they haven't done any of it. And that's not a failure of your advice, that's a signal that there's something else going on. And financial coaching gives you the tools to bridge that gap, to have the conversations that lead to change, to differentiate yourself in a crowded market by offering something that nobody else does. Transformation, not just information. And you don't need to have your money stuff perfectly sorted out to help other people. There's a real difference here. And Kristen, who was a financial advisor I mentioned in my last video and podcast, completely transformed her entire relationship with life when she became a financial coach. And she's now coaching professional footballers. And your journey really becomes part of your credibility. And financial coaching isn't financial advice. You're not telling people where to invest their money or which mortgage to go get. You're helping them to understand the patterns, the beliefs, the blocks. You're asking really beautiful, deep questions, not giving answers. And it is a skill that you can learn. Now, you might also be thinking, well, my clients just need practical advice. And if practical advice was enough, nobody would be stuck. The fact that people have access to unlimited financial information right now and are still struggling tells us something. It tells us that information isn't the problem. Implementation is the problem. And implementation requires addressing what's happening underneath the surface. So, what does financial coaching look like? Let me give you a little glimpse into this. In a coaching demo I recently recorded with one of our own financial coach students, actually, she was really struggling with what she called impulsive spending. She felt very out of control with money, and she had these big waves of shame. Very, very common, especially in neurodivergent individuals as well. But as we explored this piece together, something really interesting emerged. And there were two parts at play. There was one part of her that was feeling super generous, very spontaneous, really quite joyful around money. She was really able to make, those fast, quick decisions that some of us struggle with and take risks. But then there was this other part that felt sabotaging. It was caught in this shame spiral, worried that she couldn't be trusted with money. And it was being reinstilled by something that other people in her family were telling her. You can't be trusted with money. So, of course, the brain is hearing this information and thinking, well, this must be true. I can't be trusted with money. And these two parts they weren't in conflict by accident. They had both developed to protect her, but they were keeping her stuck in a cycle of earning money, spending money, spiral, recover, without ever feeling really truly safe to hold money. And the breakthrough came in this coaching session when she could see that this impulsive part wasn't broken. It was the actual trying to keep her, like, to experience joy and freedom. And so the work wasn't to get rid of that part, it was to integrate it. And a few weeks after this coaching session, we caught up again. And she sent me a really beautiful reflection. And she said that she'd moved from this place of shame to compassion, from I can't be trusted with money to I'm learning to trust myself. And that is exactly what financial coaching creates. Not just better money management, but a fundamental different relationship with money and a different relationship with yourself. Now, one of the techniques that we used during this coaching session was language patterns. Let me introduce this to you now, because if there's one thing that you take away from this today, I would love for you to try this in your next session, whether you're a coach, a therapist, or a financial professional. This is one of the first things that we teach in our financial coach program. And it's deceptively simple. So when I was listening to Tracy in that coaching session, I wasn't just hearing her words. I was listening for how she expressed herself. Because how someone talks about money reveals how they process the world. Now, most people have a dominant way of processing information, especially when they're stressed about money. And it shows up in their language. Let me show you what I mean. Imagine a client says, I always make bad money decisions. Here's how that same belief might sound depending on how they process. If they're visual, they might say, it looks like I'm always failing with money. If they're auditory, they might say, I keep hearing that voice telling me I'm useless with money. If they're feeling, they might say, oh, it feels like a weight on my chest when I think about money. And if they're logical, they might say, there's no data to show I'm capable with money. Can you hear the difference? Visual people use words like look, see, picture. Auditory people say sounds, hear, voice, tell myself. Feeling people say feels, heavy, tight, sense. And logical processors use words like make sense, logical, data, figure out. So why does this matter? When you reflect back using their dominant language, something changes. They don't just feel heard, they feel safe. And when they feel safe, things begin to surface. So if a client says, I just can't see a way out of this debt, and you respond with, what would it look like if there was a way out? You begin to speak their language. You're meeting them where they are. But if you said, how does that feel to a visual processor, they might really struggle to answer that question. Not because they don't have feelings, but because you're asking them to translate. So in your next money conversation, whether that be with a client, a colleague, a friend, a child, your partner, just listen. Notice any of those sensory words. Are they visual? Are they auditory? Are they feeling? Are they logical? And then try reflecting back in their language. Now, just a quick word. Many people process things in different ways. And this doesn't just mean that they are just auditory or feeling, which is known as kinesthetic. It's just in that moment, how is their brain responding to that question, to that conversation? And honestly, it is a tool that will change everything for you, even in topics away from money. And this whole process will really help the other person to feel truly seen and to feel truly heard. And that creates trust. And that trust is what allows those real money conversations to surface. Think about how powerful that might be in your next client conversation. And which one do you think you are, out of interest? Let me know in the comments below if you're watching this on video. I'm really curious to know what you think you might be and how your preferred way of communicating with money might be. So how does this fit into what you're already doing? So for coaches and therapists, financial coaching becomes a tool in your toolkit. When money comes up, and it will, you have the skills to explore it. You can offer money-focused sessions or programs alongside your existing work. If you're a financial professional, coaching skills can transform the depth of your client reviews, your client relationships, long-term relationships, differentiating yourself in a market where everybody else is competing on features or fees. This work really just brings such a depth and meaning and purpose to your work, because you're not just helping people with money, you're helping them with their sense of self, their worth, their power. They might suddenly start making decisions about their jobs or retiring in a way that you've never seen before. And financial coaching, when I started integrating this into my work as a regulated financial advisor, it changed everything, so much so that I actually hung up my regulated hats many years ago, because this work just unlocked this like golden gate of opportunity and change that I'd never seen before. And financial coaching isn't about adding more to your plates. It's about going deeper, attracting clients who are ready to have those depth of conversations. And in an AI-driven world, I really feel like this is a great opportunity to future-proof your business. And so if what I have shared today resonates with you in any way, if you're feeling that pull towards this work, I would love to invite you to see it in action. So I've recorded a full coaching demonstration session that you can watch completely for free. It's a real conversation with Tracy, who I mentioned, who's been through our financial coach certification program. And I walk you through the money narratives clearing method. This is the framework that we use in our curriculum. And you'll get to see how I open the conversation, how I explore patterns, how transformation happens in real time. And you'll start to hear the client's reflections on how she feels about money. So if you're curious, head to themoneypanel.co.uk/coaching demo. I'll pop the link in the description below. And as you watch it, I would love for you to grab a notepad and make some notes as to what comes up for you. What patterns do you recognize in yourself? What would it mean to be able to facilitate this kind of transformation? So I started this video and this podcast today by telling you that I was an advisor living in £30,000 of debt and the shame of knowing what to do and not actually doing it. What got me out wasn't another budgeting app or another spreadsheet. It was doing the deep money work, understanding my patterns, separating who I was and who I am from what I have, and learning that my worth isn't determined by my net worth. That journey is why I do this work now. And it's why I believe so deeply that the world needs more people who can hold space for these conversations. And so if that is you and you are being called, Go watch the demo, see what's possible, and then join me in next Monday's video or podcast episode where I'll walk you through the complete money narratives clearing framework. Subscribe if you're listening to this on YouTube and hit the bell so you don't miss out. I'm Catherine Morgan. It's been a pleasure to see you all today and for me to share this with you. And I'll see you on the show next Monday.